Merry holidays, everyone. Who says it like that? I say it like that. And I say we do a Christmas sequel to episode 112 about Wimpy Kid, which a more accurate term by now would probably be Diary of a Wimpy Middle-Aged Man. I figured to celebrate this holiday, we would go over what could be my favorite segment in any Wimpy Kid book, at least the first 14 that I've read, which might have been what I said last September in 2022, so I am not caught up whatsoever. I have not read the newest 4 books, so yeah, I know it's kind of a no-brainer that I should catch up. And also, my family kind of voted on this idea for this year over a different winter idea that will probably be used for next Christmas. No guarantees, it might not work, but knowing me, it probably will, because I can find ways to make things work. I'm going to be going over the last 60 pages of the 13th book called Diary of a Wimpy Kid: The Meltdown. Each book has exactly 217 pages. I don't know why they do it like that, but they just do. We're going to be knocking out a huge chunk of this book, and chances are this will probably be a pretty long episode. The duration will be at least 10 minutes, if not a bit longer than that. Let's waste no more time and do it! It begins with Greg and Raleigh trying to sled down the hill, but Raleigh hasn't upgraded his sled since his toddler days, so it doesn't support both him and Greg's weight. A little advice from your friend Kale, Raleigh. But it's okay to take the next step, buddy. I know you don't want to get a car because it'll make you look like a neurotypical, but this is a sled, my dude. We special needs people will not judge. But anyway, they tried their damnedest to get that shittin' sled to move, which they kind of managed to pull off, but it stopped in the middle of the incline. Which they said was a good thing because other kids that made it down there first got nailed with snowballs by the kids who live on that part of the road. Apparently, the kids on the upper half of the street and the lower half of the street are enemies with each other. And whenever one crosses into the other, it always starts a conflict. I don't know why this would even slightly matter. Like, I can understand if they just walked into your house and you would get upset, that makes sense. But they're just on the street. Why care if they're in front of your house? Like, not even in your yard, just on the road. And they get pissed off. Like, where is the line that splits the two groups? Like, who comes up with that? Is it exactly half and half? Or is one portion larger than the other? Who made the decision of, okay, starting with this house onward, we're just gonna be dicks to the people that live on that part because we can? Like, what the fuck? But I digress. So then a snowplow driver comes and moves all the snow off the road, which I guess equated to Greg deciding he'd been outside for long enough. Didn't we just start? Long enough means different things to different people, I know, but it's literally been, what, 5 minutes? In their universe. No, I don't even know if it's been 5 minutes in the blog or not. Possibly even less, I can't even tell. Greg's mom, Susan, who I will be referring to her as from now on if I ever bring her up, did not let them come into the house, so I'm guessing they'll have to try something else, which they did. They went to an empty lot on their street and were somehow able to build an igloo. Not like a professional one, but still like a half-sphere thing, or whatever the sperm. Oh my god. But they forgot to build a door to the thing, and Raleigh starts hyperventilating, which means sucking up the air very, very quickly. Which then causes Greg to burst through the ceiling, and all of a sudden he gets his ass ambushed by kids, unclear which side of the road they come from. But this is sort of where the story starts to pick up. We're still nowhere close to the end. I mean, frick, we're not even halfway done. But it's about war, motherfucker. They rush back to their house, and this time Susan actually does let them in, even though it's probably been only like another 5 minutes. They basically start complaining to Susan that they were being bullied out there, and she refused to do shit about it. But then the dad, Frank, comes in and states they have declared war on them. He basically states that if they don't fight back, the other kids will think that it's okay to attack whenever they felt like. Hearing that just didn't make sense to me. Right now I'm like, what? Frank states that back when he was growing up, this was the norm during the winter, and that every clan would have a fort, and each clan would try to conquer all the others. I might not be a big fan of Greg's dad, but I wouldn't doubt the guy on self-defense advice. The following probably happened to him when he was in high school.
Hey, dog, you bringing your dolls to school? It's the 90s, times are changing.
He probably knows a thing or two about this crap. So Greg and Raleigh draw themselves a flag and go back up to the empty lot. They used the snow that they used for the igloo to build themselves a wall and some snowballs and just waited for someone to attack. But then they get outnumbered and they have to abandon the fort. Apparently they were doing it wrong, and that they had to build a fort on very high ground. So at the top of the street is the first thing that comes to my mind, really. It was getting late though, so that would have to wait till tomorrow. Tomato. Alright, so it is now Sunday and it had snowed like another 7 inches since the previous day. It was so high up that nobody could drive anywhere, and the plow got ambushed by kids who wanted to use their road for sledding, so I guess it's gonna be another slippery one out there, but Greg had other plans. He had been studying up on his dad's Castle Warfare books all night long, and by the time that dawn had hit, he was ready. I don't really know how you could be ready if you didn't get any sleep, but whatever. So he goes to this kid Mitchell's shed to buy some ammunition for his fortress, except Mitchell had added new stuff since the previous winter. What intrigues me the most here are the sloppy specials. They were 5 times the price of a regular snowball, except they were snow on the outside and slush on the inside. For the ultimate freeze. Let's just stop.
You are dead!
To comprehend this for a second, if you're a minor in middle school and you were able to pull off something like this, maybe, possibly, just a chance, you should tell researchers down in Antarctica about this thing you invented instead of just giving them away to the dorky ass kids on your street. Like seriously, you are sitting on gold right here, and you're not doing crap about it. Like, I'm pretty sure it was either cotton candy or bubblegum, or possibly both, I don't know, that was invented by a child less than 18 years old. And I'm sure that kid got a lot of dough. You could be making bucks right now, like more than the kids would give you that live in your neighborhood. This could be making TV headlines and you're like, whatever. But I digress. So, Greg basically buys about 2 dozen snowballs and a snowball launcher, with the money that he took from Manny's jar. Stealing money from a baby, eh? Not a very good influencer, are you, Greg? I mean, yeah, Manny's a dipshit, but come on, let him grow up. Back to the empty lot they go, even though their dad said something about high ground. But they are surprised to see that a bunch of kids have taken up the lot. And apparently they had stolen Greg's idea because all of the forts were just copies of his. Greg, you do realize that snow forts were not your idea, right? People have been building shit in the snow for thousands of years probably. This is not new territory. Greg tries to get closer to the lot to inspect which snow fort could be available, but then he gets ambushed. So then he runs back to his house and grabs some binoculars. He keeps his distance and just views it from far away to inspect what could be going on in there. Things had gotten insane since they left, though, and the 2 thugs from earlier in the book were fist-fighting each other. You fuckers do realize it's a snowball fight, right? You're just straight up assaulting each other. Okay, I've been recording for 26 minutes. I'm trying to make this long-ass story as short as possible, but my god, we're getting nowhere. Greg and Riley eventually do find a fort, but once they step in it, they notice that apparently a toddler was occupying it, and the instant that they step in, everybody, like every freaking buddy on that lot, aimed at that specific fort. Eventually they just had to abandon the fort because of the strategies that other kids were using. I mean, hell, kids were straight up digging underground, or under the snow, to get inside the fort. Nobody had established that was considered cheating, but it would be cold shit. Like, seriously, is it worth it? Then some kid named Joe gets hit with an ice ball and loses some of his teeth. Ouch. After that, the kids stop to make sure he's okay and establish some ground rules. Dude, kids in real life would not be paying attention. A kid could literally be a dead frozen corpse and they would still be duking it out until the cows came home. But while they were coming up with all the rules, all the kids from the bottom of the street had snuck up to the top to sled down the road. At this point, this is when they all decide to team up and defend their side of the street from the kids that live further down. It's showtime, bitch. So they take a bunch of recycling bins from nearby houses and fill them all up with snow. I guess we're just gonna ignore the fact that they didn't even ask to borrow them. And they even made the wall double layered, which I'd say is pretty impressive that kids in middle school were able to pull this off before the other kids had even gone up to the top to slide right back down. Greg then asks Riley to stockpile on hot chocolate from his house, which you'd think they'd be using to keep themselves warm, but I think they're just using it to dump onto the lower neighbors. I'll say it again, but what kind of freaking grudge are you holding against those other people down there? Yeah, I know it would help if I read all the other pages of the book, but I still can't imagine it being that bad. And remember guys, you are playing. If you actually injure somebody that horribly, then at that point you're just being violent. And your ass would end up in jail most likely. I mean, maybe not. If you're super duper lucky, you could just get charged instead, but I wouldn't risk it. They stick super long icicles into their double-layered wall, and even build a number of snowmen to make it appear like their clan has more people than it really does. And keep in mind, during all of that time, the kids on the lower half were still walking up the hill. I think it would be more realistic if we just assumed they were just taking a break for a while. But once they do come to the wall, they realize they ain't got shit. So they go running off in the street while the others start celebrating. That is, until they return all armored up and crap. It looks like Jason even joined them, even though it's Sunday and not Friday. The kids on the fort start launching snowballs and crap, but then the kids down there start launching sloppy specials. This of course means that Mitchell, the kid selling all this crap, is serving both sides of the street. So I guess if I had to be anybody in this story, it would be him, because he knows there's no point for neighbors to be fighting each other. Just help either or. You're not enemies with anyone here. So now it's basically Plants vs. Zombies because they are unbelievably determined for that one summit and no other. I guess I gotta give them some credit because in PvZ the zombies only want that one guy's brain instead of trying to attempt any of the neighbors' houses. This at least makes sense. I mean, finding very steep slopes to slide down would be harder to find than brains. So honestly, I think I would be on the side that's trying to get up the hill, not just the kids blocking it for no reason. Greg, I know this is your book, but I'm gonna have to disagree with you. But the kids on the snow wall were almost screwed until the thugs who were assaulting each other earlier pour a bunch of slush from trash cans onto the kids who had planted the ladders to try to climb up the wall. So after a few waves of attacks, both sides of the street were starting to get tired. And at that point, it had already reached noon, so the kids on the lower half decided to take a break and eat. I'm guessing the sun was just behind a really thick cloud for a very long time. The kids were getting thirsty due to the heat from the sun, which you would think would mean that the wall would start melting, but I guess not, and some of them even started sucking on snowballs to stay hydrated. So basically after those kids had sucked half their inventory, they had another kid who I'm guessing they trusted guard the rest of the snowballs. But the attack from the lower kids never did come. They were trying to wait for the upper kids to just give up and go home. And one of the kids from the wall decided to jump off it and have some lunch with the kids down below because he had skipped breakfast and his ass gets ambushed to crap. Seriously, that boy was probably running like a madman and the other kids were probably screaming at him saying something like,
"Stop running like you have
On the bed.
Probably at least 6 hours go by. Yes, at least 6 hours go by. And the kids on the wall were getting hungry because it's now time for dinner. Which I don't know why I haven't brought this up until now, but why the hell have none of the parents or any older people come out to shut this thing down? Like seriously. Some kids have already just given up all hope and just went home. Including a kid who said that he would return to the wall with some snacks for the others, but he never did. Eventually, and by eventually I mean way too damn long later, a kid comes running in between two houses who apparently used to live on the street that they are fighting on. Somebody on the wall said that they recognized the kid, his name was Trevor, and they told the guys to hold their fire. They let Trevor climb up the wall. I'm guessing he was really good friends with this guy or something. And after Trevor takes a few minutes to breathe, he states that they have been holding him captive down there and that he managed to escape. They were creating a huge, massive galaxy of snowballs to stock up on, and they were nearly ready for their next attack. Apparently, they had also been building these snowballs in a yard where the owner had a ton of dogs, which probably means yellow snow, or even, God forbid, brown snow. So the kids come up with a plan to have half of the team go down to the yard with the dogs and the other half stay back and defend the fort. So as they're making their way to the yard, they use their binoculars to spy on them. And once they were ready, they pound them with the rest of their spheres of frost. Yeah, I got really tired of saying snowballs. Like, I can't even count how many times I've said it in this episode. That could be what I refer to them as for the rest of the video. But then they realize they've been fooled and that they were just wasting their ammo on snow people. Once the other group of kids realized they were outnumbering the other side, they run towards the wall and smash it to pieces. Not sure how the spikes coming out of the wall didn't poke them though. So these have got to be the longest notes I've ever created for an episode, and we're still not finished yet, because out of nowhere the safety patrol team from their school come their way to kick their asses for harassing them during school hours, in which they are not allowed to harass them back. So now both sides of the street finally decide we need to team up and fight these safety girls. And then randomly another street full of kids comes to join the fight, and now it's just a freaking free-for-all. And on top of that, the group of kids that lived in the woods come out because their leader was missing his belt, which Greg happened to have in his pocket. Where are the motherfucking parents during all of this chaos? Where? Greg and Raleigh decide to hide underneath a gap of snow, and Raleigh tells Greg that if he survives but Raleigh does not, Greg can have all of his video games. Greg sure liked the sound of that, but Greg, you do realize that all the video games that Raleigh owns are basically shit like this, right? Because his dad does not let him play any kind of games with any kind of fantasy violence in them, which is pretty much all the good ones. Then for one final revenge, the snowplow driver comes up to remove all the snow from the street. Christ almighty, it's about time. I wouldn't be surprised if Mitchell was tired of all this crap and just called the snowplow driver and told them, hey, our street is available now if you want to just, scooch it out. And then after that, everyone just decides to go home. Something they could have done before this whole thing had even started. Kids these days, man. Like, seriously, I've been recording for 54 minutes, and we're finally done. I guess I am thankful that everyone was just being stupid anyway, because it did make for a pretty good episode. Probably the best holiday BBM to date. Here's to wishing that 2024 will be another great year when it comes to vids and in general, and I swear the next episode will not be as long as this one. Merry holidays, everyone. It would have been more funny had I just fallen over, but why am I still recording?